Joining us today, we're so pleased to have Rajesh Gard, who is the Chief Financial Officer at the Landmark Group. Welcome, Rajesh. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, UiPath. Thank you, Mary.
Nice to meet you,
And
Rajesh. Thank you for joining us.
Just to give all the viewers some context, could you give us a quick summary of what the Landmark Group does?
Absolutely. So Landmark we are retailers, right? And essentially we are very big in the Middle East, India, and now Southeast Asia. We have about 55,000 employees, over 2,000 store locations spread across 15 plus countries. And we have 20 plus brands that are our own, and then we also have some franchise brands. Most of our categories that we compete in are predominantly in non-food. We do have some food businesses as well, grocery, but mostly it's apparel, home, footwear, electronics. In most of the markets that we operate in, Middle East, India, we are market leaders in most of the categories. So that's us. One more proud thing to add, we have one of the largest loyalty programs with over 10 million members, very, very loyal to our brands. So that's what keeps us going even in these tough times.
And what were the reasons that that led you to automation?
I think first just a little bit of history where I have personally had a long, experience throughout with optimization, efficiency, as well as shared services. A journey began 20 years ago, first with Procter & Gamble, then with Cadbury Schweppes, and then partly with Tesco as well, to name some brands that are people more familiar with. So actually, it's funny, long ago when we were in the world of shared services, we used to talk, and primarily our leader, Mike Power, who's also known as, one of the founding, pioneers of global shared services. He used to say he looks for a day when there'll be lights out processing, large centers where everything is now working so smooth, so efficient, and is predominantly automated. So actually, when we launched our robotic process automation center in Dubai, it was just pure luck and timing that Mike, who lives in London, was visiting, and I got him to inaugurate our center. And I told him, Mike, this is what you thought about decades ago, lights out processing, and this is what RPA gives you. So for me, it was like a natural, movement. The minute RPA popped up, it looked like the most logical, next step. But yes, retail is very data heavy, right? Hundreds of millions of transactions, and very, requires, if you don't automate, you end up with a lot of people.
But when you got started, did you establish some goals? What were the immediate sort of mileposts that you had out there to get to with automation?
See, we are value retailers, by the way. So that also puts more pressure on us because we are in scale businesses, and it requires continuous, improvement in efficiency and effectiveness. So there's never that we are sitting idle with no targets of costs and, and speed. But then when you get something like RPA coming your way, it looks like an enabler that you were always waiting for. So whatever you can do by doing offshoring, consolidation, lean, elimination, and again, those are also journeys that never end. But I think RPA stood out as a disruption where you no longer needed to, wait for the holy grail of a single, perfect system architecture. This just sits on top, and whatever you have, you get going. So I think the minute we got to understand it, we jumped on the bandwagon, to say, and we've never looked back. We've just expanded. So yes, the kind of, to talk of targets, there was, yes, how many hours of employee time can we free up.
What were some of the early use cases that you tackled with automation?
One which is quite, one which really got us moving was, look, we have 2,000 stores, and so 800 of them are in Saudi Arabia, right? And we needed to pay, electric bills, and each of the store needs a different login into the utilities website, downloading the monthly, utility bill, and then processing it for payment. So the first bot was essentially continuously on set dates, downloading the electricity bills and processing the payment totally without anybody touching it. Now, when you add up for so many stores, it becomes quite a task, and so that was like a simple bot, and but very useful.
Rajesh, we hear from many of our customers and our partners that the pandemic, the crisis, has really sort of kick-started or been a catalyst to scale their automation programs. Has it had any of that kind of effect on your business at all?
It has. So two things, right? I mean, it's the COVID has been like a paradigm shift, right? Where now it's been, what, 3+ months, and everything you thought could not happen without 10, 20, whatever, people sitting outside your office, everything is happening. So other than obviously physical movement of goods in the store and supply chain, pretty much everything is now happening remotely. And that has really triggered, all the resistance that was there about why they wouldn't want to automate a certain process or digitize it first, right? Because you have to digitize something to then automate it. So a lot of that resistance and is has vanished. So I think that is one change. The other change is, yes, it has put tremendous pressure on companies, as in the few months when there were complete lockdowns, revenues dropped, the pressure on cost has gone up, right? The whole thought on business continuity planning has shot up, right? Those were the words that some of us used to carry around in board meetings, and people would yawn at us. But now that is what everybody is looking at.
Yeah.
So we are back.
Yeah.
I mean, so those people who didn't want us are calling my center of excellence team saying, "Hey, when can we start the the robotic design that you had talked about a year ago? Can we get started, please?" So I think it definitely is having a big impact.
And what about in the short term? Were there any instances or examples of how you may have used automation for for that initial wave of disruption that happened?
So, a lot of things in our supply chain, required a lot of data to be uploaded on, custom websites, and all. The new regulations had come out. So it almost became like, if you don't use RPA, right, we would not be able to meet the deadlines for certain product registration. So now we didn't start the bot design then, but it got accelerated. So I think overall, I would say, given we were already running 200+ bots with a small lean center of excellence, 3 people, it was quite reassuring. They just sort of showed up saying, on a Teams call, saying nothing has changed for us. These 200 digital, I call them silicon sapiens, are marching ahead without any impact of COVID, right? So everything was on the cloud. So it did kind of trigger thoughts that, what if these 5 other processes would have already been digitized and were all on the cloud and automated? It would have been so much better.
I know speed in retail has always been important, but have you noticed any change in how important speed has become for your business?
Look, speed has always been a big driver of competitive advantage. And in retail, given we are, quite much more impacted by e-commerce. We always needed speed to respond and compete, across. We obviously are an omni-channel player, but with the current crisis, e-commerce has taken off, right? It's gone multifold, and we are very thankful that we've done all the investments in the technology and the supply chain. But no matter what you do, it's never enough. And I think when we are demonstrating the center of excellence is now in talks, and we are doing proof of concepts to develop a lot of robots to help our e-commerce teams deal with the sudden surge, right, in the volumes that they need to handle, in the customer service inquiries that they need to handle. And actually, we found that the whole arrival of the AI fabric has come at the right time. Obviously, we've been thinking about it, working on it, but right now, including that in our customer service bits, is going to be hugely beneficial to bring speed in how we respond, how fast we respond to our customers.
What's at stake in general if you don't scale automation now? What are the potential downsides, negative impacts?
See, as I said, the internet was already hammering, inefficient retailers, right? You then get the kind of environment we are in now. I think almost like, it's all converging to who will be the ones, who survive, right? So being a market leader, obviously it's expected, that you will do well, and you will, you will be amongst those who will actually, you might grow, right? I'm a big believer that in downturns, market leaders need to grow, but that doesn't happen automatically, right? It requires a lot of change, right? It requires continuously getting more efficient. So I think the cultural challenge is what slows down these type of transformations. Yes, everyone hates Corona, and we also do, but we got to move forward. And I think this shift, what has happened now, is making the change a bit more easier to deal with. I don't think it's a slam dunk anyway, but clearly the stakes are high because you need to get much more efficient. You need to continue on that path, but a bit more sooner. So I think you can sit on your back, right? You got to move, and this is one of the tools, right? I mean, there are many things we got to do, but this is clearly a tool to help us, up our game.
So Rajesh, you've talked about how important automation is for business resiliency. Can you give us some examples of what that means?
See, resilience is just, being able to withstand, such, things like a pandemic, right? Or a war, or a disruption from, outages and, whatever might be there. Your routes are blocked, ships are blocked, or, what have you. So or even customer behavior, right? So I mean, resilience is how you can, get impacted and how you can survive from that. So I think this is essential for any company, right? I mean, it's a top agenda, right? To remain resilient and continue to service your customers, and or even up the game, as I said, because in tough times, leaders can actually up the game. So I think not going down, not having, let's say, store openings, right? In when the government allows you to open, that is resilience, right? Not having any delayed in payments, right? And now I'm coming closer to things that are more automatable. All those electronic payments, that we had initiated, and incidentally, some of them we had created bots to do final checks and balances across different, databases to make sure we have very secure payment platform. We've got a very big UiPath bot in our major payment systems. Those give you the comfort that this part is no longer, affected, right? It's continuing. invoice creation, right? So yes, physical trucks move when they can, but then suddenly a lot of your workforce is out of action. But as I said earlier, the 200 bots that are in process and the 100 odd we're building never slowed down, right? Never had any issue of social distancing.
So Rajesh, you're a member of the C-suite. So I assume that automation is a C-suite imperative at Landmark Group. Could you just summarize and talk about why automation needs to be an imperative for boards and for CEOs to ensure business resiliency, or why should they care about automation now?
Yeah. See, the board is obviously a very important factor in building the sponsorship, right? In getting them comfortable, in making sure the investments needed and the focus needed, putting the right people in this, automation initiative. So to get their sponsorship, they need to understand it, right? And for them to understand it, you do need senior champions, right? So yeah, I think the chief technology officer, the CIO, or the CFO, it can be anybody, but these are more logical because they end up having this agenda of being as efficient, right? I mean, the simple mantra that I have is what a CFO should always ask every meeting with every business unit CEO and the CEO: how do we get more, better, faster, cheaper, right? That's all business is, right? That one line. So I think automation helps me get all of them, right? It helps me deliver more. It helps me deliver better because errors are not happening. It's error free, right? So
Mm-hmm.
better, faster, of course. An invoice or a purchase order uploading for us takes 5 minutes instead of 90 minutes. The speed is there in general or in within a bot, and of course cheaper, right? So transaction costs are lowest potentially. So I think the C-suite, this is a fundamental part. I mean, yes, you have other things, the customer, the product, and all, but I think it's a key pillar of making a business better constantly.
So we talked about, what to, why it's important to scale your automation programs now. But can you tell us a little bit about how your team decides what to automate?
We do have a center of excellence. That was the first thing we established, right? And it's a combination of person with process background. He was involved in the whole several audits, so that was useful. It has a person with transformation experience, especially actually shared service type experience, because they know what it takes to build consensus with the business units, with the functions, how you transition from a as is to a to be state, right? So that was very helpful to have the second type of skill in that. And the third was somebody who loves technology, right? So we had a finance person who is actually a computer engineer by training, but then he sometime during his career switched to finance. So this was a perfect opportunity to have that person in the mix. So a small team, and then rapid pilots, and that's how we got started. But also what helped being the CFO, I have my finance leadership team, which is the finance heads or CFOs of each brand and country. And in our quarterly meet, one half day, we locked them up in a room and said, you're not going out unless you build a small bot for yourself. And we got them to download their electricity bill or bank statement and do a few things, and that just transformed because they then went back and became our champions, right, in each of the business units. So I think that's now coming to how they choose. See, being the CFO, you cannot not have the ROI, thing right in front of you, right? So
Yeah.
clearly, any project greater than 12 months ROI is probably, not in our agenda. I mean, for me at least, right? Something we want to push passionately. We have many long-term projects, but these type of transformations are best if they can give rapid result.
Yeah.
And RPA has been tremendous, very, very quick ROI. You can see it, right? So clearly large size processes where, you can attack a lot of transactions is very important. But then the ROI. But I think the other thing is in the initial ones, especially, right? The acceptance on the other side, the process lead, how curious he or she is, right? And how keen, because no matter what happens, if that's not there, the projects I've seen, very large ROI projects get held up because there are enough reasons to not believe in it. I'm hoping now the world is changing, but yeah. So that, I think, very simple kind of a cascade of choices to help prioritize which opportunities to chase first.
Do you involve employees in automation by, inviting them to submit ideas for automations, or provisioning them with a robot for every person so that they can, take advantage of it themselves?
So it has been on our agenda. I'll say we've not reached there yet. We were waiting for, the robot for every person vision that, has been laid out to become something that we can take it to our people. I think there are pockets of, types of functions where it can be really useful, right? So we are hoping to build personas, right, of certain types of roles where we can really make a big shift in, the nature of work they do. Because in the end, yes, it starts with efficiency and all, but if we can, get people to have more time to think, right, to use more of the brain than the hands and the eyes, and I mean fingers and the eyes, I think the better off we would be. So make them contribute a lot more to their jobs. I think that is really where this bot for a person is headed. We are on that journey. We've started that journey. We want to get there fast, and probably once we've done with the bulk big processes, we would want to focus on the bot for every person.
What are some of the things that you guys did to get the ball rolling, to get things started, in regards to the uptake on it?
I think one of the things is make it fun. So, and actually, so we literally had 3 people show up dressed up as tin bots, into the meeting. But and that was quite, because a lot of people in the early days used to say, so what? So you have a physical robot sitting on a laptop? That's the, how people think of robotics. But I think overall, there has to be excitement, and when you see, I'll give an example, right? I mean, we were looking at the early, because VAT came to the Gulf countries only recently, and the amount of reconciliations and making sure everything is in place is an enormously tedious job. And when we built a bot to help the team, right, go through 50-60,000 transactions and make sure they're all good, the sigh of relief that went through when they saw what the bot was doing was like amazing. Capture it, right? Capture that feeling, and then see how this can help transform their work day, right? So I think that's probably one of the best things, right? I mean, it's an opportunity, right? So we've looked at how do we train more and more people so that they can embrace this. And I think UiPath does it very well. I love those little tiny bots and your whole series of the caricatures. They make it quite easy to grasp, as to why are we not doing this? Why have we made people do same repetitive transactions for 30 years? I mean, that's inhuman.
Being a pioneer here, what are some of the things that you discovered that if you had to do things over again, you would avoid, do differently, change? What were some of the pitfalls that others could avoid that you may have run across?
I think things that are very highly susceptible to change in your IT architecture, right? Where there is a lot of change happening in certain types of ERP systems and all, can cause a lot of trip ups, right? And it's becoming even more challenging where a lot of your big ERP systems are also on the cloud, and when your large cloud, the provider is making changes, downtime, coordinating all of that can be a challenge. So I think try and be, if you have to, if it's large enough, yes, you will still do it, but then having the the whole process set around how to do the change management, with enough, because no organization is perfect. So suddenly you wake up and you find a mission critical process hasn't run because of the changes. So that takes a lot of coordination and planning. So I wouldn't jump to those immediately, right? I think initially the bots that are really impacting a single person's work, right? I mean, the process, I mean, it's nice. And eventually when we have a bot for every person, it may still work. But as of now, I think you need to at least get some, critical mass before pursuing what looks very interesting, but is not going to result in as many benefits, because having too many of these small benefit bot implementations can kill this whole thing quite quickly.
Right. So I'm hearing you say pick some stable processes to start with, and make sure that they have scale so that you could show the impact and the ROI before you start to expand into more specialized use cases. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
That's right.
Rajesh, you talked about a little about how seeing is believing and how people got excited when they saw what the robots can do. What kind of advice would you give on how to create a culture that is open to and even prioritizes automation?
Well, if we are still on that journey, so we haven't achieved, achieved that. But I think the learning bit, right, where if you can help people learn what is happening in the field of automation, right, so that they appreciate what is being suggested, that these are something that is so rules based, right, it can be just done quite automatically, and help them transition to where they use more of their thinking, right? So helping people move from doers to thinkers, right? I think it's some may not be able to make that move. They've been for too long, unfortunately they won't be able to move, but majority of people should be able to see the power. I mean, it's no different from any other technical shift, whether it's automobiles or in telephony. So I think or computing, right, email versus regular paper. And also this is another of those changes, but the sooner we can get people to appreciate and understand. So, but yes, it needs empathy to bring them along. So nothing unique, similar to any big change, but it is a big change. It's not trivial, and I think we need to take people along, and once they see it, I think they will come along because it's very difficult to then resist.
How does Landmark measure the success? Sounds like there's some financial metrics in there. Obviously, it's important, especially talking to the CFO here. But is that the primary measure? And what other ways do you look at this as being successful or not?
I think like any other thing, when the minute savings pop up, they get eaten and they just got forgotten, right? I think we are looking to free up hours from people's lives, from people's work lives. There's hardly anyone who can say they have a perfect work life, right? So helping them with much better work life, and then, as I said, earlier, much better mix of what they do. I think there's nothing better that a company can do, making a much more meaningful job, because that's how they will, love what they do, and in turn, help drive your business. So I think it will progress soon, once the basic cost savings and basic efficiency type things have happened, because this is not reversible. And the good news is, RPA is evolving, right? As things like AI and ML are, getting better and better. And so I think it's a long journey, and exciting one. So that's how we will measure our success.
Forrester had a report that came out a couple of weeks ago that said the COVID crisis will accelerate enterprise automation plans. And it stated that one of the lasting legacies of the pandemic will be a renewed focus on automation. Do you agree with this? And if so, why?
I think the biggest lasting legacy of the pandemic is going to be acceleration of automation, right? I think it's been paradigm shifting in what's possible remotely, what's possible through digital means, and all of that leads to automation.
This is also quoting Forrester, Rajesh. They also say business and technology leaders will continue to invest in emerging intelligent automation technologies to increase the resiliency and adaptiveness of the business. Do you think automation increases business resiliency, and how so?
Automation is a big driver of resilience. Not having dependencies on physical infrastructure, right? Not having dependencies on also getting people to actually do certain tasks is definitely helping keep the basic infrastructure all going. You will need people, but overall, the underlying base becomes very resilient.
Forrester predicts that automation will become, and to some extent already has become, a boardroom imperative. Why should automation be discussed in the boardroom? Why is it a boardroom imperative now?
Automation is, I think, one of the most important levers that is now available to the board to make sure it's in their key priorities, because it's soon table stakes. It's not possible. You can't outrun a speeding race car with a bullock cart. So I think it's as simple as that.
We have heard from many of our customers, like Nielsen, that automation can drive cultural change in the organization. How do you think automation can drive cultural change?
I think there is a lot of organization culture that kind of is required to get a lot of basic activities done, right? Access to reports, conducting simple transactions, all that requires there's an informal culture, right? Which you find certain executives are able to get work done faster because of their informal networks. I think those networks will still be needed, they will evolve, but a lot of what they are used for will change because it will make people do whatever else they're doing much better because a lot of the underlying transactional or basic stuff can happen automatically. So they can do more meaningful work. So I think overall the culture will evolve to more meaningful work, and the networks will transform from being needed for everything to probably be needed for more of the more meaningful stuff.
We've heard from many companies that automation is helping them increase their competitive advantage. Do you agree with this? Is it possible to increase your competitive advantage using automation?
I think automation is now or will very soon be fundamental to gaining and retaining competitive advantage.
What's your perspective on how automation is the impact of automation as it expands across the globe?
Use this framework, across a lot of my journeys, and it's essentially, it can be summarized as eliminate, automate, consolidate, and then offshore, right, or right shore, let's call it. Obviously, there were limitations to what you could automate, and hence the world gravitated towards very large, offshoring centers and so on, and shared services became, what has been going on for 2 decades now. I think the paradigm shift has happened with RPA, where it kind of fills in all the gaps that your big, large ERP systems have. Everyone has a mosaic of different systems, and RPA comes and sits on top of it and almost via citizen computing, call it, right, is able to help you link up stuff and automate far more than what you could earlier do. So I think this is the fundamental shift, that what goes into a shared service type, consolidated large shared services is dramatically smaller. So had RPA come, 15 years ago, we would have seen much smaller shared services. So I think it's but anyway, it's time now. So as computer vision transformed and RPA has become what it is now, I think we are gonna see. But then regions who haven't, or companies who haven't done shared services, and there are a lot of them, I think it's RPA first for them. I would say, I don't think there is any software company that is as exciting because of the way you've packaged it. So it's fantastic. So I'm always happier to interact and learn. So I've learned this amazing, gentleman in Sweden, one in Pennsylvania, one in New York, and then me in Dubai. And I mean, it's another. I would have probably, I don't feel different than if you did this with me in your whatever that Las Vegas Forward 3.
Yeah,
It
good.
felt like
That's good. That's what we want.
Yeah. Hope
Well,
to see
I think,
you.
I speak for Mary. If there's anything that we could do to help you, I know, you have a lot, people at UiPath who are dedicated to helping you, but anything that we could do to help as well,
Absolutely.
please don't hesitate to ask. We're thrilled to be part of this with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh.
Okay.